welcome to All Things Moore County, Moore County's weekly radio show highlighting the many facets of the Sandhills. That includes real estate, lifestyle, community and neighborhoods. And now from 4 Properties, here's your host, Bill Sahadi.
Good morning. Welcome to the talk show, All Things Moore County. Dorothy, it seems like yesterday we had our first guest, Todd Zimmerman, on the show. He is the upper school principal at the Sandhills Classical Christian School. And, I mean, we videotaped a show with them. They had a couple of guests, a couple of parents on. And we talked a lot about Sandhills Classical Christian and what a presence it's become in Moore County. Interestingly enough, we've had them on the show, I guess, 2 or 3 times over the last couple of years.
At least.
And but it's always a good conversation, and it's always an important conversation. Todd, good morning.
Good morning. It's good to see you, Bill.
Yeah, January just seemed like yesterday.
Flew by, didn't it?
Give me a Cliff Notes version from what's happened since January when we've seen you.
Well, we finished up a school year. We finished up the school year, and our grammar school was in their new building.
Right.
So they completed a full year in their new building. Since then, we've hired Jean Liechty, who you're going to talk to in a few minutes here, as our development director.
Right.
And we're looking forward to the future in continuing to grow the school and grow our new campus over in Whispering Pines.
Yeah. We're going to talk a lot about education today. We're going to talk a lot about changing demographics and how education has become such an important part. When I moved here in 1999, it was golf memberships. Which country club were you going to join and where were you going to play golf? Our demographic shift is completely flip-flopped. And it's no small coincidence that this is the second or third time you guys have been on for good reason.
Yes.
Jean Liechty is sitting to my left. He's the Director of Marketing and Development at Sandhills Classical Christian. And even though you're the new marketer and developer, this is not your first go-round. So I want to wish you good morning and kind of ask you how you got here and why Moore County.
Well, I feel like I've got 1 foot here, 1 foot in the community. And good morning, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes. So I haven't fully moved here yet with my family. I have a sophomore and a senior that are finishing up high school in Cary.
Okay.
And they're at Cary Christian School, which is another classical Christian school, very much like Sandhills Classical Christian School. And we had just moved back from building another campus, 2 campuses out west, one in San Luis Obispo, California, and one in a university town of Moscow, Idaho. And one promise that I made to the kids when we moved back to our home in North Carolina that they spent most of their lives in was, look, you're going to get to finish here. You can play football and basketball here with the kids that you started school with. And so I've got a couple of years before we fully immerse ourselves in Moore County and all things Southern Pines, Pinehurst. And
what are your impressions of Moore County, and how long have you been here at the school?
Well, there's a lot going on. I remember one of the first things I did when I arrived on a free evening was go to an open mic over redistricting, and I realized right away that I was stepping into a hotbed. And of course, that's what you would expect, right? We're talking about people's children. We're talking about education. We're talking about their greatest treasure. And so emotions run high.
Yep.
And there's a lot of passion when people get to the mic, and everybody has an opinion. And I just thought, wow, I thought I was entering a sleepy town. And like you mentioned about the demographics, it's not what I thought. It's changing dramatically, the families that are moving in.
Right.
Our families with children, it's not quite the retirement community that I anticipated, that sleepy town that I thought I was moving to. But you know what? I like activity, even a good rumble once in a while. So.
Yeah. You're joined also, I want to introduce Amita Sherwood. You're a board member at the school, and you're a parent of 2 children at the school.
Yes, Bill, that's correct. Our family moved here about 4 years ago, and we have 2 daughters, one in 2nd grade, one in 4th grade.
Okay.
We've been at Sandhills Classical Christian School. This is our 5th school year.
Yeah. I was delighted to hear before the show that you're a Philadelphia native, and even though I'm not, I spent many of my formative years there right after college and had nothing but great memories of West Philadelphia, the main line. Look at the smile on her face. Are you homesick?
Well, there's always a part of me that's in Philadelphia. I should say, there's always a piece of Philadelphia that stays with me. It's where I was raised, where I grew up. I certainly still am a fan of the sports teams. I can't say all of the sports are my favorite.
Eagles have a tough game this weekend,
but I certainly will cheer for the sports teams. But have migrated south year after year from that Philadelphia area.
Yeah. How did you get to Moore County?
So we moved 4 years ago. My husband and our 2 daughters, we came here for an opportunity for him to work with the Army. And so he does work with the military, and we were in the Washington, D.C. metro area for about 13 years prior. And for him, this was an opportunity that really, what he said to me, which is a sports analogy, is it's like when the NFL calls you. You can't say no.
Right.
So it was an easy decision for us. Our daughters were young. My work is portable. I have my own business that allows me to work out of my home.
What do you do? May I ask?
I have a consulting business, a management consulting business. So as long as I can get to an airport and have a Wi-Fi connection, I'm good.
Okay.
So it was an easy decision for us to come here. Just in terms of the community, it was right what we were looking for. The DC area had grown and grown so much in the years we were there, and we were looking for something more quiet and just more family friendly for us. And also, at the time, we had already been committed to a classical education, so we knew that the Sandhills area was the right area for us.
So just the way you speak and your diction and your organization of thought, right, and your delivery tells me that you are watching both your 2nd and 4th graders, making sure that they get the best education they absolutely positively can, right?
That is correct.
In between the lines. Did you look around at different schools when you were here? How did that whole process go?
So I would say the short answer is no, we did not. We did not look at other schools in the area just because we had come to this area with a knowledge of the classical Christian education. However, in 2013, we had an opportunity to move here, and at that time, we were not aware of the classical Christian model for education. So we did look up my husband did a Google search, private schools in Moore County, which is how we originally found the Sandhills Classical Christian School. We visited. At the time, we were looking just at the preschool, and we were really amazed and thought, yes, this would be certainly where we would want our children to go to school. As we realized the opportunity wasn't there for us, God's timing just wasn't for us at the time to be here, we really stayed interested in classical Christian education. We researched it more. We asked the opinions of our parents who have been in the education field for their entire careers.
Your parents were?
My in-laws are elementary school educators.
Oh.
My father is a professor in college. And so we did take their advice. We sent them the information we found on the website. We went to the Association of Classical Christian Schools to learn more and understand what is a classical Christian education. So with their advice, we really knew this was the education for our children that would really be what we were looking for. So when we moved in 2015, we were already decided that this was the type of school and that we knew that SCCS was the school we wanted to be with.
Yeah. In past conversations that I've had with Todd, we've had conversations about discipline as an underlying theme and a factor that seems to permeate everything that they teach. And I've been in the school. I've seen how well behaved the children are, how polite they are, how they make eye contact, how they shake your hand, and they don't, shrug their shoulders. And that's all a byproduct, I think, of to the layman, classical Christian education. They might not know what it is, but we're going to talk about it today. But you have an opportunity this coming Tuesday evening. You're having an open house, and I'd love to hear about it and why so early in the year. And what people can expect to see and what your hopes are for that open house event. Gene.
Yes. You're right. It is a little unusual to have an open house quite so early in the year.
Right.
And November and December is not unusual. Typically, though, open enrollment doesn't start until the beginning of February. So you have re-enrollment with your existing families.
Right.
And then open enrollment begins the beginning of February and continues on into the summer. So you're right, this is a little unusual. But having arrived into this community when I did, knowing that announcements are being made even now in regard to details of redistricting, knowing that we're getting phone calls every single week at the Whispering Pines campus inquiring as to seat availability for students and things, and that's actually happening.
Is this because solely because of the redistricting?
In part, we have families moving into town who
Yeah.
are interested, just like Amita and her husband, Doug, did years ago.
Right.
But yeah, there are folks looking right now at what their options might be locally. They don't want to leave the area. They're not leaving the area, but they are looking at options for their children because of the redistricting. And so we thought, why don't we, instead of just continuing to accommodate a trickle that comes in, why don't we set a date where we can have teachers available and students even in the classrooms. You can engage the students, you can engage their instructors. Curriculum will be set out, administrators will be there, even families will be there. We want to give folks a taste of not only the academics, not only talk about the behavioral bar, the academic bar, and where that's set, not only hear about the future expansion plans for the campus, but get a real taste of the culture of the school. So families will be there, instructors will be there, administrators will be there, students will be there, the lights will all be on, and we're even pitching a tent. We're looking forward to engaging the community and just sort of opening the door wide. And that's what's happening on October 22nd at our Whispering Pines campus.
Will you have some of the parents of the children that are there already to speak, or sort of like ambassadors? Or
Yeah, that's correct. We'll have PA reps there, other parents there.
Okay.
I think Jean mentioned some students will be there, administration will be there.
Okay.
And this is all going to take place at our Whispering Pines campus. We have 4 different campuses. So we want to make it clear that to come to the Whispering Pines campus,
Right.
which is where the new facility is that we built, and the students fulfilled their first year in that last year. So.
Yeah, people don't realize Sandhills Classical Christian School has been here 21 years.
That's correct.
So one of the past guests that you've had on, Kathy Parsons, her son, I think, is about ready to graduate.
He graduated last year.
Oh, he just
actually, as
graduated.
our valedictorian. Got a full scholarship to go to Liberty University for it, all of his tuition paid for.
Wow.
He's doing great there.
Wow. So he was one of the, well, not the first year of students, but early
He
on.
was a third year of graduates, yes. So this year we'll be graduating our 4th year of seniors. So even though the school's been around for 20 years, it was only a few years back that the school decided to add the high school.
Okay. So right now, Sandhills Classical Christian runs from kindergarten through 12th grade.
Preschool through 12th grade.
Preschool.
So yeah, age 3 all the way up through 12th grade.
And 2 campuses?
We have 4 campuses, 2
I wasn't
preschool
even
campuses.
close.
Yeah,
Okay.
2 preschool campuses. There's one in Pinehurst and one right down the road from the studio here.
Okay.
The Whispering Pines campus is our main campus. That's where we have 58 acres of land, and that's where we house our K through 5th graders. And then our upper school campus is over in Southern Pines. That houses 6th through 12th graders, and we rent from the St. Anthony's Parish over there.
Okay. It would be real easy just to direct people to the website, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. The website would have all 4 locations and all 4 phone numbers.
That's where I should go, right?
That's right.
That's sandhillsccs.org?
Yes,
Is that
it
the
is. That's
www? Okay. So the event happens on Tuesday. Your enrollment period for next spring ends when, or starts when? Or has it already started?
Well, we are in the process of enrolling in classes where we have spaces. And so,
Yeah.
yes, we're enrolling year-round. We try and accommodate families that come into this school. Officially, open enrollment starts the beginning of February. But as we have seats, we welcome families into the school at any given time.
All right. You know, to a point you just made about the redistricting and how emotions run high, I literally was at an appointment with one of my brokers this past week, within a week, and the couple is actually, they're putting their home on the market for sale, and they already have secured a rental home for 2 years. And the reason they're doing it is specifically because of the redistricting. That's as direct as I've heard it. I mean, I hear a lot of things, but Amita, when you moved here, I mean, education was on the forefront of your mind, and lots of people who come in to buy homes, they're always wanting to know about schools, schools, schools. It's jobs and schools, jobs and schools. So it's no surprise that this has become an issue with people who are currently living here, who are going through what, I guess the Moore County schools are going through what they're going through, and some of the people are they feel betrayed. So let's come back in the second set. Let's talk about some of the specifics about the Sandhills Classical Christian Education, what it is, what it means, and what's in it for people who are listening. This is All Things Moore County. We'll be right back. Thank you. Welcome back to the second set of All Things Moore County. We're talking with the Sandhills Classical Christian School, and Amita Sherwood is a board member. She's a parent of two daughters at the school, Todd Zimmerman, who is the upper school principal, and Jean Liechty, who is the director of marketing and development. In addition to the open house coming up this Tuesday evening at the Whispering Pines campus, they're here really to speak about the school, what makes it distinctive, what makes it unique, why parents should consider a classical education. And I think there's a disconnect with some people, because I think they think there has to be a religious affiliation to go to the school. Really, there doesn't. I mean, yes, Christian values, but can you talk a little bit about that? And we want to talk about the school itself.
Sure. We are a faith-based school, but
Yes.
Students do not have to be believers to attend our school. Parents would have to agree to our statement of faith, of course, and understand that each child that attends the school will have some Bible classes. But that's all part of classical education, and even if you take out those Bible classes, integrated into everything else that's taught is a biblical worldview.
Maybe I said it wrong. Let's say you have a student that's a member of a Presbyterian church and a student that's a member of a Catholic church.
Oh yes, we're non-denominational.
That's what I meant.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
I believe we represent about 43 to 45 different churches in the area with our student body. Yes,
It's non-denominational.
that's correct.
Thank you. I've been to the school. I've seen some of the teachers. I know some of the people that work there, and I certainly know a lot of parents, and I know what they say about the school. But what do you want to tell people? How is a classical education different than a public school education?
Sure, we'll let Jean start with that, and I think Amita will have some interesting things to contribute as well.
Sure.
From a parent's perspective.
Yes.
Well, one of the things, starting backwards a little bit for us, we had 4 children in 4.5 years, and so there were years I don't even remember. We were so tired when they were young and couldn't feed themselves or tie their shoes. But we started with a girl, and then we had 3 boys, and so today they're 20, 19, 17, and 16 years old. The 16-year-old's about to be 17. But when my wife and I were thinking about education, just like Doug and Amita were at one point, we started thinking about the end result. What were we looking for? What did we want our children to look like when they were graduating and leaving the nest and heading off to college? What did we desire?
Right.
And we certainly were looking for kids who could articulate, kids who could defend their faith, young men who knew how to look somebody in the eye and shake a hand and engage, kids who knew how to think. Not just trained to the test, but kids who knew how to think on their feet and were able to interpret everything through the lens of Scripture that they were encountering in the world. Kids who could pick up a newspaper and say, is this true or not? Is this true, and is this good, and is this beautiful? Be able to determine everything based on that sort of a thing. And so as we looked around, much again like Doug and Amita, we landed on classical Christian. And we landed on it, and we stayed on it. And our last two are graduating out from a classical Christian school. And I've spent the last 20 years supporting the movement, the classical Christian school movement. You know, there are 550 schools around the country that look very much like Sandhills Classical Christian School. They're either a part of the Association of Classical and Christian Schools, or they're part of the Society of Classical Learning, which is a sister sort of national organization. And so we wouldn't have considered moving, regardless of my job opportunity, unless we were landing in one of those 500 cities, from Manhattan to Orlando to LA to Seattle, one of those cities where we could educate our kids that way. Now we have online live classical. And so I have friends up in the Philadelphia area, actually. All things lead to Philadelphia on the show. But in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, at Veritas Scholars Academy, they're training up 10,000 students right now. And a lot of those students they're part of families that live in areas, not just in the United States, but around the world, where there isn't a bricks and mortar Sandhills Classical Christian School to go to. And those parents have fallen so in love with the type of education that the kids are getting, not just the educational bar, but the behavioral bar, the moral bar, the biblical bar, that they're not willing to even look anywhere else in regard to education. So I'm not even sure if I answered the question. I'm not even sure that there was a question, but that's our story. That's the Gene and Kimberly Liechty story in regard to how we stumbled into it, and why we've stayed with it, and why we actually have invested our lives in advancing the movement that is classical Christian education.
Yeah. And I would say that parents that send their kids to a classical school like ours, they see a huge difference. Amita probably sees a huge difference on a day-to-day basis. I had recently heard of a previous parent who called the school and said, "Hey, these kids that are coming out of the school, I'm no longer there, but wow, what a big difference it's making." So, and Amita, you probably see that with your own daughters.
We do, absolutely. And for us, our story, I wish I could say it was very similar to the Gene and Kimberly story when we started. So we were probably not thinking the outcome as much when we were thinking, how do we educate our children? We were probably in more of the traditional thinking of where would our children get, good testing scores, what kinds of schools would they get into, good colleges. So some of that traditional thinking is kind of where we started. And frankly, with both my husband and I having a partial private school background for both of us, we did consider, private as an option. When we moved to North Carolina, we certainly were focused on, going into the private school realm, again, without not really understanding classical Christian education. As we were exposed to it, it really was like a light bulb. It was kind of like we didn't even know this existed. We didn't know that the education that our country was founded on existed, and what we were really missing currently in our education system. So it was really learning that the classical Christian model is, it helped us to be more outcome oriented, and that we knew that, raising ethically and morally, founded or grounded children, that the outcome would be, no matter what they do in their lives, what vocations it does, what school they got into and what vocation became less important, because we knew that this foundation would prepare them no matter what.
So I hear independent thinking. I hear ethical and moral demeanor. You go on social media these days, and there are a lot of jokes about kids. They're entitled. They get into bad habits, and they think the world owes them a favor. From the kids that I've seen at your school, there's a difference.
Yeah, I would also add critical thinking.
Critical
because I
thinking.
think that is lost in a lot of schools across our country.
Yeah.
And that's something that we aim for in our students, that they have critical thinking. You know, if you really want to see the culmination of classical Christian education, you want to come to our senior thesis night, which is at the end of every year in May. And those students blow you away when they present. They do research and write a huge paper, but it's not only a paper for their research. They have to present that before a live audience in front of a panel that questions them, and they have to defend it in front of that live audience. And it's just, well, I think, Amita, you went there last year to see that for the first time. It's something that, even though I've been in classical education for a number of years, it blows me away every year.
Mm-hmm.
I think what really stands out for us is to see children of that age, so seniors in high school, have the confidence, the knowledge, the fact and the truth, that they're able to be comfortable in front of an audience and defend a position, again, with truth, steeped in what's, fact and truth, not to attack a different opinion, but to accept it with love and to be able to defend, a different opinion. And then I will go down even to our children's ages, in elementary school level, our grammar school, seeing young children in front of their classrooms. Just a couple of weeks ago, our second grader did her timeline project with her classmates, and they were asked to stand in front of their classroom with the parents in the room to present their timeline.
Wow.
She's 7 years old.
Right,
And for her
right.
to do that, and she wasn't upset about it. She didn't say, I don't want to do it.
Right.
That to me is a huge difference. They're confident at such young ages, to present who they are and what they're doing, and are comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're a great role model for your daughters. Let me tell you, if they have to follow that every day, wow, that's terrific. No, what you just terrific.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Gene, you were going to say something.
Well, I was going to say that I had a great experience back in Cary. Back in 2004, when we were just establishing that campus 50 miles north of here, we were looking for a lender. And so BB&T, at the time, I think it's renamed now, but BB&T came a-courting, and we brought 3 commercial lenders into the school. They went into a second grade classroom, very much like what you'd find at Sandhills Classical Christian School. And they were blown away. There were second graders that were taking 8-word sentences, and they could parse the whole thing. They could tell you what the verb and the noun and the preposition and the object of the preposition and the adjective were. 2 of those bankers ended up enrolling their children in our school the next year, and we thought we knew why they were attending, and we were very glad that they actually extended us a loan, but they were so caught off guard by what they saw that they didn't soon forget it. As a matter of fact, you can't forget what you see in the classroom, even in the grammar school. I always tell folks it's not just teaching. You don't pay tuition just for teaching, to get information from a book into a head. What we're after with classical Christian education is nothing short of transformation in the lives of these kids. Their minds, their hearts, all of that.
Well said. That was very well said. The Sandhills Classical Christian School is hosting an open house event this Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. at the Whispering Pines campus. For all the reasons being spoken about at this table, this sounds like it will be a great opportunity for people to familiarize themselves with the school, or for those who don't know about it, to find out the jewel that's here in Moore County. Let's come back in the third set. I want to talk to you about some of your expansion plans. I want to talk more about the education, more about the students. This is All Things Moore County. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our third and final set. Speaking all about the Sandhills Classical Christian School, there's an upcoming open house at 6 p.m. this Tuesday, the 22nd, over at their Whispering Pines campus. We're speaking with Gene Liechty, the Director of Marketing, Todd Zimmerman, the upper school principal, and Amita Sherwood, who is a board member and parent of 2 daughters, second and fourth graders. We've had a conversation about some of the tenets of a classical Christian education. And as I sit here, I grew up, went to public school, and my main goal every day was to hide out. I wanted to be like the kangaroo who put his head in a pouch, and if I couldn't see the teacher couldn't see me. And I remember my mother used to discipline me when I would come home from school. And she would say, you need to study. I was not a good student. I didn't pay attention, and I got away with it. And my father would say, leave him alone. Let him go through the school system. He'll learn how to deal with the world. He'll get his tough lessons and this and that. And I guess that kind of, as you're talking, I'm thinking back to the struggle my parents had. I bet there are parents out there where perhaps one spouse says, this is something we should look into, and the other spouse says, well, the cost that's involved, and, is there a benefit, and is it going to work, and is it worth it? And how do you answer that question? Because sometimes people don't tell you what they're thinking.
That's. I would agree that's true.
Okay.
Because I've experienced.
That's why they're married, right?
And I've experienced parents coming in who are on that page. One's on one page and one's on the other.
Mm-hmm.
But I just share the benefits of what kind of education Sandhills Classical Christian School offers, and I'm able to speak to that from experience, having had 3 children of my own go through classical Christian education. Off the air, we were talking about my daughter being up at App State, and I just feel
right.
What she is doing now as a teacher's assistant and doing a great job with her grad classes. She graduated with her bachelor's with the highest honors. I contribute all of that to her classical Christian education that she had.
So she graduated high school.
Mm-hmm.
She was focused. She was directed.
Correct.
Without it, she would have been entitled and listless. Is that the other extreme? I guess it is. And somewhere in between is a happy medium.
Yeah, well, like you mentioned earlier, Bill, that you've been to our school and you've seen our students.
I have.
You've seen the product. So
I see kids all the time, and I see kids that stand there and they'll look you right in the eye and they'll talk to you. And these are very good students in the public school system and students from the classical Christian. But I see kids that don't look up, they have no eye contact, they have very poor communication skills, they have low confidence levels, they are reactors and not initiators. And I would venture to say that you probably have a very low incidence of reactors and a high incidence of initiators. And isn't that the goal of the education?
Yeah, I believe that's absolutely true. There ought to be a difference. If the behavioral bar and the academic bar are set higher day in and day out, and we always are quick to tell parents, look, we're partnering with you in the education of your children. You don't drop your children off on Monday morning, August 1st, and, clap your hands as you're on the way out and say, well, we'll see you in May. We partner with you day in and day out. It's the family. We are a community of folks that are like-minded in regard to the expected outcome. What do these children look like? Again, how do they think? How do they articulate? What do they believe? These are the things that we're working toward. But back to your point earlier, there's no doubt about it. As I look at the other people at this table, it's a sacrifice. There's a cost.
Yeah.
There is tuition. It's painful. It means prioritizing this. It means saying no to other things. 4 kids, in 4.5 years, as I said earlier.
Right.
And we still have 2 we have 2 in a classical Christian school, and we have 1 in college at this time. But no regrets. Best investment. Right, Amita? Best.
Absolutely. So, I would also admit that, as a family, we do make sacrifices, for the purpose of being committed to the classical Christian education for our children. But it never feels like it's a question in our minds. And what what we see in them, some of the things that really stand out about, being at Sandhills Classical Christian School is our kids are taught through the Trivium, which is designed for their God-given developmental stages.
Could you talk a little bit about the Trivium? Because we really haven't done that, and I do want to outline that a little bit for the listeners.
Well, I probably won't be that best person, but
Okay.
I will just provide our own experiences, and then I'll probably pass it off.
I think you'll do fine.
But in terms of at the early stages, so the grammar stage, children, they're sponges. I mean, they will absorb. It is for us as the parents, we just did not realize how much information they could possibly absorb. And so they are absorbing facts and rhymes and chants, and they enjoy that experience because they're using rhymes and chants in the classroom, and they're making it fun, and their songs. And so they memorize, a lot of information. And I'll be honest, I know that there are probably questions about, well, what is it really important to memorize anymore? One of our children a year or two ago, she said something, and she had regurgitated something she memorized, and I said, well, what does that mean? And then she diagrammed a sentence for me, something that I was not taught when I was a child. And I said, oh, she really actually knows this information. Memorization leads to the knowledge, and the actual knowledge of the information. So that going into then the next stage, which is the logic stage, which especially in society now, I think it's really even more important for people to be able to discern truth from fallacy, and really use
Tell them not to watch TV.
critical thinking and logic to be able to discern, right, what is correct and what is true versus what is not correct,
Right.
or where are there holes in arguments, because unfortunately we see a lot of that all the time. So that, I think, is just going to be, for our children, they're not there yet, but that's going to only be of a benefit for them. And then in the rhetoric stage, so you take, from what I've learned, you take an already argumentative child in that stage, but you learn to teach them to be articulate. You learn to teach them in a world where people are going to try and sway their opinion all over the board. What's their opinion? What's the truth for them, through their faith, through that biblical worldview, and that, they can articulate and defend their opinion and not be swayed in ways that might be false or, different or wrong. I don't want to say different is okay, but so that's for us, really what we're investing in, what we know, and are making certain sacrifices to commit to their education.
And she did a great job explaining the Trivium by talking about the grammar stage,
Yes.
the logic stage, and the rhetoric stage. You did very good.
and I can attest that he meant that, because I was watching him listen to you and watch you, and he was very proud. For sure. She did a very good
She
job.
did an excellent job.
Yeah, what a surprise. Wow.
That's right. Bill, when we talk about classical, we're talking about the methodology. We're talking about how we teach, how we instruct K to 12. But there's that Christian element. So we're classical and Christian, and the capital C is the one associated with the Christian part of it. And we'd like to think that we're that Christian school for everybody, regardless of socioeconomic background. Sure, we've talked about the sacrifice, and there's no doubt about it. There's tuition, and the tuition's on the website and things. But I can tell you this, as sure as I'm sitting here, that a parent's commitment to classical Christian education is more important to us than your ability to pay full tuition.
Okay.
And you have to trust us in that and believe that, and come and see. Come and sit in on our classes. Come see what we're doing. Come see how kids are being transformed.
Right.
Come see what that means for the families.
Right.
I've seen it all across the country. I visited 50 classical Christian schools last year alone. I was on 50 campuses across the United States, and it's amazingly beautiful how consistent things are occurring in the classroom and the hallways and the bar. I'm so encouraged by not just what's happening here, but by the movement that we get to be a part of. I'm very excited. So many people are pessimistic about the future, but you have to spend some time in our hallways, and I think it'll give you that
Right.
glimmer of hope that it's not that bad, and we can do this.
Yes.
We can do this.
Yes.
I like what you say in your ad slick, graduating citizens of excellence who observe, think, and articulate with humility reason, and clarity for the glory of God.
It's our mission statement.
That's a good for you.
Yep.
That's a good mission statement. So in there, the word humility really sticks out to me, because it's you have a sense of self, but you also have a sense of others at the same time. You look at a high school senior, just random high school senior. Their world is it's their universe, and you're sort of like a planet running around their sun. They get so wrapped up in themselves. The kids have a view outside of themselves.
Yes.
So empathy becomes a very important part of it too. So I'm impressed with your commitment. I hope that this open house is very successful, and like anything else, and Amita, in your consulting, you'll know this. Consistency is so important, and you just have to keep getting the message across. Again, the event is going to be this Tuesday evening at 6 p.m. at the Whispering Pines campus. It's an October open house. It's a chance for people to meet some of the students, some of the parents, some of the teachers, familiarize themselves with the Sandhills Classical Christian School, and start a conversation or start thinking, because just having a knowledge of something is the first step in formulating, plans and ideas as you go forward. So I want to wish all three of you the best of luck. I hope it's a great event.
Thanks.
Todd Zimmerman, thank you for coming and joining
Good
us.
seeing you again, Bill.
Amita Sherwood, I want your autograph, and I want to talk to you about a job. And Jean Liechty, Director of Marketing and Development, congratulations. It's a great place to live, and it's a great challenge that you have. But you guys seem to have the enthusiasm and the heart to pull it all together.
Well, it's very exciting. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, Sandhills Classical Christian School. This is All Things Moore County. We'll speak to you next week.